Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our CFATS webinar with our speaker, Scott Fixmer, with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. I'm Ashley Swingle, your moderator with Carus. A few housekeeping items before we get started. All attendees are in listen-only mode to help cut down on any background noise. If you have questions throughout the webinar, we encourage you to submit those throughout the presentation using the question pane in your GoToWebinar panel or email us directly. If you submit questions through GoToWebinar, we will receive a report with the question and your contact information to follow up directly after the webinar. Here are a few ways to find us. We have listed our website and general sales and marketing email address, as well as my email address. Do you receive our email blasts for upcoming webinars, presentations, trade shows, and technical information on our various solutions? If not, sign up on our website. You can find the Join Our Email list on any landing page on the right-hand side. Be sure to select the industry when signing up to ensure you receive the most targeted information for your needs. And we can't forget to mention our social media platforms. We encourage you to connect with our Carus page, as well as our team members on LinkedIn, where we're often sharing upcoming events, including webinars, industry articles or news, sharing relevant posts from industry experts, and more. And then this slide shows our website and then also two places where you can find upcoming webinars and on-demand webinars. This is where this recording of the webinar will also be held. At this time, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our speaker, Mr. Scott Fixmer. Scott is a chemical security inspector for the Inspections and Enforcement Branch within the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the office within DHS, which has responsibility for implementing the Chemical Facility Anti-Terrorism Standards, or CFATS. In this capacity, Mr. Fixmer serves as a technical authority on the CFATS Regulation responsible for conducting compliance assistance visits, corporate outreach, physical security reviews, and site security reviews of regulated high-risk chemical facilities. He is a certified protection professional and is currently assigned to the Inspection Enforcement Branch office in Chicago. I will go ahead and pass it over to Scott.
Thank you, Ashley. Okay, I believe my screen should be showing now. Is that correct, Ashley?
Perfect. Yes, looks good and sounds good.
Great, thank you. So, why chemical facility security? We face a persistent and evolving threat. A successful attack on a chemical facility could potentially cause a significant number of deaths or injuries. Although there are a few examples on the screen, one that many people may be familiar with is the West Texas fertilizer explosion in 2013 that resulted in massive destruction and many deaths. So CFATS statutory authority was given by Congress in 2006, and the CFATS program received authorization to be extended currently through July of 2023. Just a little bit about the CISA organization and where CFATS falls within that organization. So we're actually affiliated with the Integrated Operations Division, which also houses the Office of Bombing Prevention, Infrastructure Assessment and Analysis. They're responsible for CISA exercises, security programs, strategy, performance, and resources. Our program identifies over 300 chemicals of interest, and we require facilities that store, manufacture, or distribute those chemicals of interest at screening threshold quantities and concentrations to report their holdings to CISA and comply with CFATS standards. CFATS follows a risk-based performance standards approach. So it's not one single set of standards that would apply to all facilities. We realize each facility is unique. Within CFATS, we have our Appendix A, which lists 322 chemicals of interest at screening threshold quantities and concentrations that require reporting to CISA. I realize that is a little bit of an eye chart to try to read that sample of the Appendix A, but it goes through and identifies the chemicals of interest, if there's a synonym for the chemical of interest, the chemical abstract number, and that breaks it down into categories of release, theft, sabotage, what the quantities would be associated with each of those or any of those, and what the security issue would be that's associated with that specific chemical. I'll call out just a couple of examples. Hydrogen peroxide is regulated by CFATS at 35% concentration or greater for facilities that have a quantity of 400 pounds or greater. And we tier hydrogen peroxide for theft. So there may be facilities that have hydrogen peroxide that are in very large immobile bulk storage tanks that may not fall underneath the regulation. Potassium permanganate is another example. We regulate, again, for theft, and it's any commercial grade of that product. This is just a sampling of some of the many types of facilities that fall under our regulation. Some of them are rather unique in the types of operations that they have. So it really is a wide variety, which leads to why there's not one specific approach that we take with facilities. As you can see, there's many different types of facilities here. There are exceptions. So facilities that are regulated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Departments of Defense or Energy, public water systems and water treatment works, facilities regulated under the Maritime Transportation Security Act that's managed by the Coast Guard are all exempt from the CFATS regulation. Agricultural production facilities, in 2008, DHS indefinitely extended the top screen due date for agricultural production facilities. Just one point of clarity that I'll add to this. Facilities regulated under the Maritime Transportation Security Act may have portions of their facility that are outside of that regulation. If so, if chemicals of interest are stored in the area not covered by the Maritime Transportation Security Act, may be subject to the CFATS regulation. So facilities with chemicals of interest at or above screening threshold concentration must submit a top screen. We use that information to determine the threat, vulnerability, and consequence. Covered facilities will be placed into one of 4 tiers. All of those tiers are considered critical, with tier 1 being the highest risk of the high-risk facilities. So a little bit about the process. A facility would submit a top screen. They would either receive a tiering of tier 1 through 4 or be deemed not high risk. If they're deemed not to be high risk, it ends at that point. If they do receive a tier, the facility would be asked to provide a site vulnerability assessment and a site security plan or an alternative security program. After that's submitted, you would receive authorization, and an authorization inspection of your facility would take place. Once the facility receives final approval of the site security plan, the facility would go into our regular compliance inspection process. Risk-based performance standards. Again, it's not a one size fits all approach here. These are the 18 risk-based performance standards. Now, some facilities may not fall under sabotage, but they would fall under the remaining 17 risk-based performance standards. Each of these standards are tailored to fit the facility's circumstances. There's chemical security inspectors located in all 50 states. I'm currently in Region 5. The CFATS national footprint displayed here shows the areas of concentration of CFATS regulated facilities. As you can see, Region 5 and Region 4 each have over 600 CFATS regulated facilities. The numbers reflected on the screen show the number of activities since the inception of the program. So we've had just short of 7,000 compliance inspections, almost 4,000 approvals, about 4,500 authorization inspections, and over 5,000 authorizations. Recently, we received our 100,000th top screen was received by the program. Submitting and protecting information. So Chemical Security Assessment Tool, or the CSAT tool, is our online program that includes applications for user registration, submitting a top screen, identifying the chemicals that you have, security vulnerability and site security plan are completed on that site, as well as our personal surety program. We use what we call chemical terrorism vulnerability information as our means of protecting information related to the CFATS program. CVI is the information protected category used for CFATS related information. To access CVI, an individual must pass CVI training and have a need to know to obtain that information. So this is an online tool that you would use to take the CVI training. It's very quick. It takes less than 15 minutes to complete. It does a good job of just explaining how we protect information you're providing. And basically, it's your contract with the government. We are letting you know the information you share with us will not be shared with others. Personnel Surety Program, background checks. So there's two portions to our program. The first portion is we require that individuals that have access to the chemical of interest have completed a background check, and that your company has a record of that background check on file. Additionally, individuals with access to chemicals of interest will be vetted for terrorist ties against the terrorist screening database. Facilities have 4 options to implement the terrorist screening provisions. The first option, and the option that all the facilities I've worked with have taken, is direct vetting through CISA's online tool. Using that tool, facilities submit the individual's name, their address, if they're a US citizen, some very basic information. The second method is verifying credentials through also through CISA's online tool, but this would be credentials such as a TWIC card or transportation worker identification credential. Some of you may be familiar with that. And there are other credentials as well that would be accepted to our program. I always point out to facilities when they're trying to decide which of the 4 options to use is that government issued credentials have a shelf life of 5 years. There's a cost to obtaining one of these credentials, and there's also a cost to recertifying these credentials. By selecting option 1, there's no charge to the facility. Once the facility submits the information, it's really a one and done process. The only updates would be if a facility brings on a new person, they would have to go in and add that person to the system, or if a person leaves the facility, we ask the facilities go through and annually review the people that they've submitted. And if a person no longer works at the facility, simply remove them. The third option would be using an electronic credential reader, like a TWIC reader. And then the fourth option is verification of the credential visually, looking for key characteristics on the credential to make sure that it's authentic, and also to verify if it's a current credential or if it's expired. In May of 2019, this was approved to include all covered chemical facilities. Previously, it had just been for tiers 1 and 2. Now it's all covered facilities. What should you do next? So there's the information on how to access the Appendix A. That would be the first place I'd start. Take a look there, see if you have any of the chemicals of interest. If your facility manufactures, stores, or distributes any chemicals of interest in the Appendix A at or above minimum concentrations and screening threshold quantities, you are required to submit a top screen. And then step 3 would be to complete the chemical terrorism vulnerability information training I spoke of. To register for Chemical Security Assessment Tool, CSAT, so you'd have access to the applications, and then to submit your top screen. I'll pause and leave this information here. And Ashley, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, perfect. Great information and a good screen to pause on also. We did get a couple of questions that came in. If anyone has any additional questions, continue to send those through your GoToWebinar panel. So the first one that I received was, how many days can I have a COI without having to report it?
Great question. 60 days is the correct answer. However, I would just like to add to that a little bit. So we've had facilities that have brought chemicals of interest into their possession with the intent of being able to use it and be rid of the chemical before they reach the 60-day threshold. And I'll use one example of a company that had a project that was being completed at a remote site in Chicago, Illinois. They were using potassium permanganate, was the chemical that they were using at the site for some remediation project that they had. What they found was that due to some of the permitting processes and delays with those that they encountered with the city of Chicago, they actually ended up having the chemical of interest for more than 60 days. So they thought that they were going to be well below that, and it turned out that they had it in excess of that. So I always just suggest to facilities that our process is very simple. It's improved greatly, actually, since the beginning of the program. We've taken great steps to improve the ease to the end user. So I always encourage facilities, if you receive a chemical, and even if you believe that you're going to use it and no longer have that chemical, go ahead and submit the top screen. That way you're covered. If it turns out that you're able to get rid of the chemical and you're not anticipating having it for some time in the future, it's an easy step of just going back in, submitting an updated top screen that shows that you no longer have that chemical.
Okay, and another one that came in, if I report having a chemical of interest and use it up on a project, what do I need to do to show that I no longer have the chemical of interest?
Okay, actually, I think I just covered that actually in my response to the first question. So again, you would submit an updated top screen, and you would just zero out the amount of the chemical of interest to show that you no longer have the COI.
Okay, perfect. And it looks like that's all the questions that came in. Again, if anyone comes up with any questions after the presentation, feel free to reach out and we will be sure to get an answer over to you. Other than that, that's all I have. Scott, thank you so much for your presentation. Everyone, thanks for joining today and have a great day.
Thank you.